Hello everybody, my name is Veladam01 and after a quite long break which I had to do because I just basically had no time to record any new videos, sorry about that, but finally I am back with the next episode of Cities Skylines East of the Curtain, my former Eastern Bloc inspired city building series. In this episode I am going to build a massive city expansion using the classic socialist prefab housing tenements. I am going to build this expansion just like the original urban planners of the former Eastern Bloc, the socialist countries did in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. I'm just going to basically test out what urban design patterns and what prefab tenement types are looking good and working together when they are built next to each other. They just basically tested in production to see what works, what should be improved, what should be forgotten, and what should be standardized and used nationwide in the project when building houses for the people. And for the next 15 minutes, you will see me building 3 new socialist-style housing estates and hear me talking about them, what you should know about these buildings, what are the differences between the different building types and the different layouts, where I took the inspiration from when building a specific layout. If you already know these or you are just simply not interested in it, you can skip this episode and see you in the next one. But anyway, let's start the construction and let's do it. Okay, so here we are at the first estate of the today's build, and all of these estates are going to follow basically the same pattern, that they would be built along some kind of a main road with some kind of a grid-like road pattern. Then they would just be hooked up to the main road where the area can be approached through it, where all the traffic would go, and then will be just distributed onto the smaller roads and the crossroads. But unlike what Akruas told in the urban planning episode of his Altengrad series, by the way he showed a Hungarian prefab housing project in that video, I am going to build a more likely Hungarian style prefab area where the buildings are actually closer to the main road, as it acts as a local main avenue to make the area a little bit nicer and part of the estate, where the public transport goes, where people can walk along and all the commercial buildings are located on at the bigger intersections, instead of being just a highway like main road that has to be bridged over by a pedestrian overpass for the citizens like Akruas did. But I think that the only estate in Budapest that is like this is located here in Szentendrei út, but none of these estates that I'm going to build in today's episode are going to be inspired by this. Instead, this estate here will be based on Kelenföld, or will be kinda similar to that. It will feature mostly row houses, which are not directly placed on the street, but kinda on these separate sidewalks, which are separated from the street by these planters with trees all around the house and all around the estate. For the taller houses, I use these Soviet 1464D type houses made by Tenavoid. They have been on the workshop for a long time, and the original ones were built in the 70s and they were really common in the Soviet Union. I tried to look up more information about them, but I only found it in Russian, which I don't speak, so I couldn't decide if it is a Khrushchevka or Brezhnevska, but it should be a further developed version of one of these. And I'm not sure if there were any of these built outside of the Soviet Union, but since they are kind of similar to what we have here in Hungary, I just decided to use them. And after finishing the row houses, I just filled the empty spaces further away from the main avenue with these 5-story smaller prefab houses made by Pelix, trying to not be so repetitive. These are also these 1464 types of houses, but they are Lithuania style instead. But since I somehow managed to find actual useful information about them, I can tell you that these are definitely Khrushchevkas. And to finish the area, the estate also received a big school complex and a small Spar supermarket to follow the classic Soviet self-sufficient micro-district and the formerly taught Main Avenue design principles. Okay, so here we are at our second estate of today's episode. This estate is actually consists of two different estates built next to each other on the two sides of the main road with completely different design and style. On one side, it is not inspired by anything, it is just a design I wanted to test to see how it looks and how it works. It has its own small road network with parking lots and connectors, kind of separated from the main road, not directly connected to it or the streets around it. And you can see that I replaced the trees built in the assets with some nicer ones, only using vanilla trees by the way, you know, the ones that were made by Mr. Mason for the airport's DLC free update. And I also turned the internal middle street into a nice pedestrian walkway using the bluestone pedestrian street from the Plazas and Promenades DLC. Meanwhile, on the other side of the main road, first I built 3 of these residential tower blocks using some East German prefab residential towers made by Meistermunis. And you would see that I tried to make the area nice and livable by making these parks with the walkways between the buildings. And you can see that one of these towers is actually opening from the park walkway and not from the streets. Then I built these 5-story smaller Czechoslovak prefab row houses made by Acroas in this kind of interesting shape to break up the repetitiveness of the grid, and also this arrangement allowed me to squeeze some parts between the houses, just like in real life, because in real life you can always find a park, a playground, a dog park or a concrete football or basketball field to boost the land value and the attractiveness and the citizen happiness around. This area here, by the way, is inspired by this area in Szombathely, where you can see that there are mostly these 5-story buildings mixed together with some family houses, some commercial to serve the residents who live in the estate, and some kind of industrial looking buildings all around. And then there are these 10-story tall blocks kinda towering over the scenery and the smaller houses in the background. And in the ending cinematics you would see that I managed to create something similar to what inspired me, kinda perfectly recreating the atmosphere of these Kami block estates in Central or Eastern Europe. And this is our last estate in this video. It is not inspired by anything, but I wanted to create here something and not just leaving it empty. So I just basically copied some already existing designs next to each other to form another new prefab area. You can see that I first copied these tall row houses made by Across, which I had already built some amount in the city. Then I copied these weird double L shaped, or I don't know how I should call this shape, prefab buildings. They were built from modular pieces, as the asset here comes with modules. And by the way, the backstory of these assets is that they were originally made by Kofka Murka somewhere around 2015, but they had kinda some issues when I wanted to use them in 2021 or 22. Then I asked Murka if he allows me to fix it, and he said yes, and I just basically did a revamp on these assets. Then I just basically uploaded the whole pack to the workshop and marked Murka as a creator. Then I also built these big standalone block houses onto the other side of the main road, which later also appeared on both sides, not just on this side. And you can see that I also included a small park-like square on a lot where I didn't want to build a big blockhouse because it would just be too dense and ugly here. So I just built this design which I have already made in the other side of the city, and just copied the designs from the first estate at the beginning of the video for the row houses, but instead of using the big 10-story ones like that, here I use these smaller 5-story tall buildings to create them, and they are also working fine for this. To decorate the estate here I did not use planters, only dirt and grass decals with some trees and pea-elmo weeds. Maybe because this is a poorly maintained or kinda run-down area of the city, which kinda needs some refurbishment, but to be honest, it looks kinda good how I made this. To manage the traffic across the estate, you would see that I just restricted where the cars can turn left or cross the main road, and we have a new mod in the series, the Direct Connected Medians mod, which resulted in this nice long stretch of road with a continued grass median on the middle of the estate, because the mod forces the game to render the medians through the intersections when you ban left turns and straight lanes on them. It has only some minor problems. For example, it doesn't work with tram roads. Basically it just won't do anything even if you ban everything on it. And the citizens would still cross the road at these intersections where they shouldn't, as there is no visible crossings for them, because the mod actually just makes these crossings invisible. It does not remove them, so they are still there and count as valid paths for the citizens. I could fix this by banning path crossings at these intersections, but I won't, as people in real life also cross the roads like this against the rules, so it kinda doesn't bother me. Anyway, to finish today's episode and today's project, I just provided some public transport to these newly built areas by extending a tram and a trolleybus line to these. And where I didn't do this, where I didn't provide some public transport, is because I had to make a new line, which would be actually part of a something bigger transport project in a future episode. But anyway, please just enjoy the rest of the time-lapse, and I'll be back in the ending cinematics. So here we are at the end of today's episode. To finish this, please enjoy some cinematic of the newly built areas. If you want to keep updated or see random screenshots about my city, just follow me on Twitter at veladam01. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I will see you all in the next one. I was Veladam01. Thanks for watching. See you later. Goodbye.